Hi, a little heads up before we start. The canvas can get a bit blinky and flashy towards the end of each drawing due to how my process goes, just so you know. Hello! Welcome to my first round of artfight attacks. I'll be showing you the first 3 in this video, telling you a little about my process along the way. So, jumping right into it. I started with Pigeon in the IKEA's character, Mira. What drew me to this character was the 70s color palette and her awesome wardrobe. I typically work with cooler tones like purples and blues, so it was nice to do something different. In terms of workflow, I wanted to start in my comfort zone with a style I could do relatively fast. The plan was to do a few sketches of different poses, but I ended up going along with the very first one. Mira has a sweet and introverted personality, and I wanted that to come through in the drawing. I imagine she's very caring in a calm and quiet kind of way. That's why I went with this pose. Her and her cat Mimi leaning into each other gently. After the rough sketch, I made another layer to do a cleaner pass on top before moving to the coloring. I always start with flat colors first. Either by making one singular color pass and filling that in with the flat base colors, or I will just go straight to putting in the different base colors. What I mean by base color is sort of the true neutral color of the surfaces, unaffected by light and shadow. What I do next will usually be to add shadow. To save time, I like to use blending modes. For those who don't know, a blending mode is a setting you can put your drawing layer to in order to make it interact differently with the layers below. A lot like a filter. There's tons of blending modes you can play around with, but for shadows I usually stick to the one called the multiply. I like using a purple for this layer, because you can usually get pretty solid results most of the time. I'm not gonna get into the whole science behind color and light right now, but there is a lot more to it than just adding purple shade, of course. While blending modes can be a super tool and really speeds up your process, there's something you gotta keep in mind. It doesn't teach you anything about real-life light and color. If we don't know why we make the shadow purple, it can be easy to put it in places where it shouldn't technically be. In this case I did it because I thought it would be a nice contrast to all the warm oranges as a complementary color. Lighting doesn't always have to be realistic, sometimes it's just a stylistic choice. At the end of each drawing, I like putting some paper textures on top. This is why you get all the blinking. It's because I'm scrolling through the blending modes and it gets really flashy when it's sped up. And also in this case, the creation of the pattern for the background. So that is it for Mira. Next one up is Mollybag by Made Crazy. What I like about this one is the energy she brings. Like a hyperactive gremlin child. She's got this wonderful contrast of cute and unhinged, I think. Starting off, my initial idea was to have 3 little drawings of her in different poses on like a leaf stocky kind of thing. I gave it a shot during the sketching stage, but I quickly felt overwhelmed, so I narrowed it down to just 1. As you can see, I filled it in with a rainbow brush after the sketch was done. There's literally no reason for this, I just thought it could be fun. I had a vague idea of doing like a black and white plus rainbow kind of thing, but I moved away from it quickly because I thought her color palette is too big a part of her design. I'll just save the idea for a future piece. What you might notice next is that I'm just going straight into outline mode. This is normal for my process, but there's one thing missing. I didn't really plan out the volumes of this character. This would mean breaking her body down to simple shapes like spheres and cylinders and such. Because I didn't do this, it caused some struggles later into the drawing. Like figuring out how the dress falls, the perspective of her legs especially, or how to shade her. When there's no volumes, it's hard to tell how the light is supposed to interact, because now it feels like a flat 2D plane with no dimension. That doesn't have to be wrong necessarily, but it wasn't quite the effect I was going for this time. I think if I were to do this drawing again, I would have gone with a more asymmetrical pose and spent a little more time figuring out the volumes. Then the shading would have been easier. Either that or lean completely into a more graphic flat look on purpose, which would have changed the way I shaded it completely. I think it would have made sense to have her in a more uneven pose too, because she feels like such a dynamic person versus a static one. But well, sometimes things don't turn out the way you imagined, and I'm working on getting more okay with letting go. Fortunately, there is a lot of power in ignoring perfectionism, I think. As someone who is generally very strict with themselves, it feels very liberating to say, it's good enough, and move on. There's a lot more to be gained in moving forward awkwardly rather than spinning my wheels in the same spot, digging myself deeper into a pit of mud, you know? I just try to take the lesson and attempt a different way next time. That is not what I ended up doing here, as you'll soon see. But you know what? It's fine. Fuck it. Sometimes I gotta learn the same lesson multiple times in different ways for it to really stick. And now I'll remember it for sure. Anyway, that's Molly Bug. Last one up is Leah by Mannequins. Sorry for any mispronunciation. For my third attack, I wanted to do something different. Having done 2 illustrations in my usual way, I chose to try my hand at pixel art. So I jumped into Sprite, a pixel art and animation program. As far as I can tell, it's the best one out there, and for good reason. It's very easy to use, has a ton of useful tools, and there's an abundance of helpful tutorials online for free. This is not a paid ad, by the way, I just fucking love this program. Anyway, this is Leah, a creature of chaos that watches your dreams corrupt your being. I went with this character because I thought the design looked so cool. It's also way less saturated than the previous 2. Often when I make art, it's sort of in a pendulumish kind of way, which means that if I've done a lot of one thing, I'll want to go to the opposite end next, and so it keeps swinging back and forth, always slightly off, to bring me in a vaguely new direction each time. Or something. Maybe I'll try and explain it better at a later point. But to continue, the second reason I went with pixel art for this one was because the design looks pretty fussy with its textures. The hair, the coat, the skirt. So I figured it would be easier and faster to pull off in a smaller resolution. The important factor isn't always speed, of course, but because I had a lot of characters I wanted to do, I just happened to prioritize it this year. Now, even though I'm working with pixels here, the resolution is still fairly high. I'm using a standing Nintendo DS resolution of 192 x 256 pixels. Basically, I'm more or less still treating it like a normal drawing. I tried keeping it pretty loose. Now sketch layer just straight into the outline. The reason I felt comfortable doing this is because I knew I would be treating it a bit like paint, where I would fill in areas and draw over it anyway in the end. So there's a lot of room for mistakes, you could say. As you can see, this has a bit of the same challenge as the previous one, in that it lacks volume. However, I think I got a little bit more away with it here once I started shading. The pixels lent themselves well to the fussiness of it all, I think. I also learned something new with this one. While doing the background, I accidentally hit Shift S, which made my lines snap to an invisible grid. I didn't know what the hell was going on, but I thought it looked pretty cool, so I just kept it. Honestly, I wasn't sure what to make of the background here at first, but I knew I wanted something. One of the artfight goals for this year was to give every piece some kind of background, atmosphere, context. Just anything but a white canvas. So this here turned into some kind of metal plating business with red glass covered by spiderweb. In the end, I have a lot more thoughts, but I'm not gonna be able to cover them all coherently just for this one. This whole video is one big experiment after all, and I'm learning a lot as I go here. But yeah, that's it for the first round, and going by the same formula, there will be 4 more videos to cover all 16 attacks. This is my first time doing this, so please let me know if there's anything you missed seeing or hearing, and I will try to carry it into the next one. I would also like to give a shout out to my friend Makimorphosis, who also started doing YouTube recently. She's inspired me to take this new step and put myself more out there. If you enjoy relatable reflections around art and burnout and really nice editing, I can highly recommend her. Go give her some love. Alright, thank you to the artists for sending me their wonderful characters, and subscribe to catch the upcoming attacks. Okay, bye!